What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some updates for Destiny 2, as well as a preview for the weekly reset coming up on September 30th. Man, time is flying by, although arguably it isn't going quick enough, given that we are waiting for further updates to Destiny 2 and some of the other content actually launching with Ash and Iron, which should be next week. But in this one, we'll round up a few updates from Bungie, things related to the game this reset, including updates to challenges and rewards. I don't believe we'll be getting a new patch this week, so that's worth keeping in mind because we've had pretty much weekly updates for, well, almost since Edge of Fate launched, but I don't believe we're getting one this week, at least it isn't announced just yet. But, of course, we will get one next week with the launch of the Exotic Mission and a few other things, so we'll round up a couple of points there. Otherwise, we'll touch on weekly challenges, new sort of challenges in the raid, which actually are and a couple of other things. But yeah, definitely, it's kind of a future-facing week in terms of, well, we're probably looking more to what we get in other weeks as opposed to this one. But nonetheless, we'll round some of it up. So if you find the video helpful, get subscribed. Otherwise, now let's get into it. So, as I mentioned, looking at the portal right here, I don't believe we've got an update this week. That may change. Bungie don't always announce patches ahead of time, but the next update will be next week on the 7th of October, where we do get the return of Arms Week. So that'll mean the submersion crossbow can potentially drop, as well as Trackiness being featured, I believe, as the shotgun for Arms Week. So that's the first thing. Otherwise, there's a small sandbox update next week and the launch of the Exotic Mission, where we can finally get this axe that Bungie have been teasing us with right here. So next week certainly will be more interesting than this week. We may see a bit of a bump in player numbers and interest, especially for the Exotic Mission, but I guess time will tell. A few things for this week though, of course. On Kepler here, we do have the weekly missions. If you're over 350 power, completing these will drop one tier 5 piece of gear, and we can attune at the altar of relativity. Most players know that, but worth keeping in mind as a few folks continue to level up. Now, if you're over 450, of course, you may as well use the loot cave on Kepler. Kepler might not have your favorite gear, but in terms of farming tier 5 gear, you can pretty successfully farm a whole host of drops in, half an hour. Maybe every 2 or 3 minutes, you'll get a drop in the loot cave. So I'll link a video about that down below, just in case you've only just reached that kind of a power level. Before we go any further though, a quick message from our sponsor. And if you don't know, stem cells are like tiny repair crews in your body that go ahead and fix things that need to be fixed. Some folks have been ahead of this curve for years, such as Joe Rogan, who's talked about this previously.
I had a full-length rotator cuff tear, and the UFC gave me a doctor in Los Angeles, and he looks at my MRI and goes, "You're gonna need surgery." I go, 100%? He goes, "I don't know how you're using it now. It's a matter of time. You're gonna need surgery, so it might be better to do it now." So I got it shot up with stem cells.
The crazy part is, though, that stem cell therapies are illegal in the US, but there are ways to naturally support stem cell activity, and it comes from high flavanol cocoa. Studies indicate that the flavanols in cocoa can stimulate stem cells to come out of your bone marrow and offer numerous health benefits, including improved cardiovascular health. And while the process to make dark chocolate often destroys cocoa flavanols, our sponsor today, Black Forest Supplements, have created the first ever high flavanol cocoa powder. It's only 20 calories, and if you mix it with coffee or a protein shake, it tastes great. Plus there's no sugar, and if you're feeling a bit old or slow, kinda like me, then cocoa flavanols may be worth trying out. The great thing is that our sponsor are offering buy one get one free for the next 48 hours only, so it's definitely worth checking out. The link is in the description and pinned comment down below. Be sure not to miss that, and thanks to Black Forest for sponsoring the video. I'm not sure if we'll see any surges in the portal this week. Last week we had the one that can drop wells that give us boosts to ability energy. It'd be lovely if Bungie would drop a surge that boosts reward drops, higher tier gear and power. I think that would be probably more successful at this point and might claw a few players in, but nothing confirmed just yet. Looking at the weekly challenges, I can't guarantee that these are actually entirely correct. It only displays 3 for this week, but looking at them, we have Expedited Violence, to rapidly defeat targets in portal activities, and there's bonus progress for opposing guardians. There's Grandmaster to complete any Nightfall strike on Grandmaster. Of course, that isn't quite correct. It may count for some of the conquests that we get over here, but can't confirm that until it happens. I believe we did get a challenge that said complete a Grandmaster Nightfall before Ash and Iron, so probably will work. Otherwise, there is Bring a Sword to get final blows with swords, and we get bonus progress in Haunted Sectors. Now, I feel like that one's probably dropping at the wrong time, and it sounds like a challenge from last year. I don't think we're getting Haunted Sectors back when Festival does indeed drop, but even still, Festival isn't live this week, so it could be that these are incorrect in the database, but we'll simply have to wait and see when we get into the game on Tuesday. Importantly though, other Portal things, Trials will return once again this weekend with Friday's daily reset, so you can have fun with that again if you feel like it. Looking to Kepler though with the raid, and of course the Epic raid, which launched over the weekend. That was relatively successful for folks who actually enjoy raiding, because it does get a new encounter, which actually is in an area that was originally previewed in a cinematic for an unreleased piece of content back in Destiny 1. I think it's an area that was originally associated with Pyramidion. That's the final boss encounter for the Epic version of the raid. But with the launch of that, nonetheless, of course, we'll get the weekly reset, so a refresh on rewards. And Bungie have also said that now there are 2 weekly challenges for the raids. So the first can be completed in either version, and when you complete that, it unlocks a second weekly challenge in the Epic raid. And they've also changed a bunch of stuff related to gear drops and feats. So between 0 and 2 feats, you can get tier 4 drops, and then between 3 and 5 feats, you get tier 5 drops. On top of that, there'll be additional power dropping from the raid, so that's nice. There's also a chart you can see on screen with the drop chances for different tiers depending on how many feats are actually present. It also affects the spoils drop rate, so that's nice. And they also say, to elaborate on the loot system in the raid, that kind of replaces weekly lockouts that previously affected raids. So this was created to address feedback from players wishing to continue earning power and loot from raids even after their first run of the week. So every time you complete all encounters in Desert Perpetual on Epic or Base, you'll reactivate powerful drops for all encounters, refresh the locks on hidden chests, and reactivate the full clear bonus, basically allowing us to continuously farm them for power if you want to repeatedly run the raid. Obviously, that doesn't affect all players. Raid content is somewhat niche in that it's fairly hardcore content, but I do think Bungie should be paying attention to the changes they've made there and apply more of it across the portal to speed up progression and things like that. Obviously, we've given that feedback many times, so I'm not going to talk about it a ton right here, but Epic Raid's been relatively successful. Unfortunately, it kind of only really appeals to a small portion of the player base, so Bungie, definitely do more of what you've done in the raid across the rest of the game. Outside of those things, when it comes to older raids, anything in the Legacy tab or Destination raids, whatever it may be, and also dungeons, of course, there's no weekly lockout on the exotics anymore, so we can totally farm any of the exotics in Legacy raids and dungeons, and that might be something to do if you need to catch up on any of those while we have a sort of quieter week with new content, certainly worth keeping in mind. The final mention, though, for sort of Legacy content is in the Dreaming City, of course, and that's with the Ascendant Challenge, which this week is the Keep of Owned Edges, which you can find via Harbinger's Seclude. So if you still run those for fun or for any other utility, I'll link a clip showing the location and collectibles for that at the end of the video. But yes, it's going to be an interesting week to see what Bungie have to say in terms of communication. A lot of comments saying we need a state of the game update right now, and I would thoroughly agree with that. So hopefully Bungie can kind of get on top of discussing and communicating more about the general health of the game in the very near future, but we are simply going to have to wait and see. For the moment, guys, that's what we have to talk about though. So if you found the video helpful at least or interesting, then a bit of feedback down below would very much help us out. Let us know how you're feeling in the game at the moment. A like rating and a subscription if you are new around here would also be very wonderful. I appreciate you as always. Once again, big shout out to my friends at Black Forest Supplements. If you want to check out any of their products in the store, then be sure to follow the link down below. And of course, you can get the discount on the products we mentioned in this one as well. So all of those details are in the description box. But otherwise, as always, I appreciate you tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you guys have an awesome day.